Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you will be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne from Generation to Generation, and our guest today is Abbiih Oloyede. Now, we have had Abbiih's husband, Jonathan Oloyede, on before, so if you haven't heard that episode, go find it. But Abbiih, for people that don't know who you are, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
So I'm in London. I am a pastor. I'm a cognitive behavior therapist practitioner, a trauma coach, and an entrepreneur as well. I do a bit of consultancy work. I'm a prophetic intercessor. I interpret dreams.
Oh. I've got some pretty crazy dreams we can talk about.
Don't get me started on dreams. No. And I've got two wonderful young adults, yes.
Fantastic.
And for people listening, they say, you know what? I like Abbiih. I want to hear more from her. Where can they find you? Where can they see more of your teaching? Maybe things that you've put out previously. Where can they find that?
They'll find me on Instagram, Abbiih Oloyede. That's Alpha Bravo Bravo India Hotel Oscar Lima Oscar Yankee Echo Delta Echo. Abbiih Oloyede.
Wow, were you in the police force previously?
I used to be in travel.
I was like, not many people know the way you say that, so that's pretty funny. Okay, yeah, and I will put the links for those in the description. So for people listening, you can go straight to the description and find the links that Abbiih's just talked about.
So, Abbiih, we have been through the whole world has been through quite a stressful time, and we believe it's going to continue into the future. It's not going to be easy. So can you take us on a bit of a journey of your walk through these last months, and take us with you on your voyage of discovery and what you have learned, because I think we can all learn some lessons from you.
Thanks, Daphne and Andrew. It's really, really nice for you to have me. I'm really excited about what you and Andrew and Daniela and the whole team are doing. I mean, you're doing amazing stuff. And thanks for having me. So, I must say that when we went on lockdown, I didn't take it seriously. When the Prime Minister said, lockdown due to COVID-19, I was like, oh yeah, here we go again. So yeah, but we're in lockdown. And then I think that same week, by Friday, one of the ladies in my church called really crying. I said, what's the matter? She said, my dad literally just passed away. I'm like, what? She said from COVID. And Daphne, panic setting, anxiety. I could literally feel my heart beating. I could taste panic. As somebody who's suffered from anxiety and panic attacks in the past and a lot of thought intrusions, I was unprepared for what I was about to experience. And apart from that news, one of the things I love to do because of my phone is to also listen to the news, So I'm reading, not even listening is visual, right? I'm reading, I'm looking at the statistics, I'm reading, I'm binging on all things to do with the lockdown. And so that's and the news that I heard just set me off. So here I was, I woke up in the morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm literally just going to pass away. So I thought, what can I do? So I put my hand on my chest and I started praying in tongues. I was like, Lord, I need to just calm myself down. So I did that for a bit. I began to feel peace, and suddenly the dryness in my mouth, the palpitations, everything kind of ceased. And that actually rekindled my journey into actually becoming a cognitive behavior therapist practitioner. And then a few months ago, added on another training to become a trauma care coach. If I'm going to unwind, if I'm going to backtrack, my journey didn't start during the lockdown. Way back when I became a Christian, I just realized that I was suffering from what I later self-diagnosed as thought intrusions, where now I know what I did. I would allow those subtle thoughts into my mind, play with it, romance it, and before you know what's happening, it's actually become so magnified that I literally begin to show signs of panic and anxiety, and so by myself, this started happening when I was in my late teens, and I was all by myself in Bible school when this was happening. But I remember that when I became a Christian, I picked up a book, a little book that titled Right and Wrong Thinking. And so I read it, and Philippians 4:8, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue or if there be any praise, think on these things, was the anchor of my soul. I would put my hands in my ears. I would recite that scripture about 500 times. I'm not kidding you. I would go into church, just put my hands in. And then after a few weeks, I noticed that I was trying to remember what I was afraid of or what I was afraid about, and I couldn't remember. And I thought, so that's how you deal with the battle of the mind. I'm telling you, Andrew, the feelings, I would be on a train and I would literally feel crawlies, almost like something is crawling up my legs. And oh my gosh, I'll feel like I'm literally about to lose it. And so Philippians 4:8 actually really helped me. And over time, I developed a program called P48, whatsoever things are true, really trying to encourage people to engage with their minds and the thought processes and things like that. As somebody, not the word self-taught, I love teaching myself, as somebody who self-taught herself, as I began to read, because I love to read a lot, I only read things that are very meaningful to me, because if I say I love reading a lot, I'm not talking about reading big books, but I just love reading. I love binging on what I enjoy. It was during one of those moments that I realized that what actually I was also suffering from were thought intrusions. And so I began to read how to deal with it. And I read one or two books, subscribed to one or two ladies who had done extensive researches on the mind, and realized that my brain was wired in such a way. God created you and I in such a way that our brain is subject to neuroplasticity. It is being rewired, all the time. And whatever we expose it to, whatever we binge on, our brain actually latches onto. And so over time, I've learned not to allow those subtle thoughts. So the lockdown caught me completely unawares. But hey, I'm so glad that it was also an opportunity for me to get my certification. And while I was able to quickly recalibrate, because the principles I use is, once a thought comes, I don't deny it. I don't pretend it's not there. I literally allow that thought. I look at it, I face it squarely, and then I begin to do a lot of self-talk. So what do you need to be afraid? Okay, so what do you need to do? So part of what I did after praying and all of that was stop listening to the news completely, no binging, because I needed to feed my mind on positivity. And I began to think, okay, what can I do with myself? And that was the reason why I went to do my certification. And also, I began to help more people. So 7 a.m., I developed my program, which I'd always done, but it was much more structured now. And coincidentally, people will call me to say, Pastor, hey, gosh, I'm struggling with this. So I began to run all through the lockdown. I began to run mentoring with Pastor Abbiih, Mind and Purpose program. I began to do a lot of that, just talking through people. Mine, I prefer CBT because CBT is solution focused. It's looking at that thing or that situation you have with your mind and facing it, doing a lot of self-talk, trying to stop the thought, obstructing it, pausing, and then recalibrating. Just keep on, practicing. I love the word, the muscles of the mind. Your emotional muscles. You keep practicing, until your mind begins to say, okay, I'm not wanted here. The thought begins to say, I'm not wanted here. And one of the things I say to people is, think about what you're thinking about. And if you know Jonathan, which I'm sure you do, my husband is a radical believer. And so during the lockdown, he would say to me things like, oh, he did a lot of extensive study on heaven and hell because of the Bible study that he decided to start during the period. And I remember, we were having a conversation and he was saying, look, that what we're going to give an account to God for is so important. And every single believer must make sure that they are following the agenda of the Almighty. And I began to think, okay, so all this, my CBT, all this trauma care, how do am I in sync with God? Is it in line with what he wants me to do? And as I began to think about it, because honestly, when you're at my age, one of the things you don't want to please anyone, you just want to please the Lord. So I was thinking, Lord, this old thing about the mind, I'm willing to drop it and just, whatever else you want me to. And I just heard that still small voice within me say, you know what, if you can help people to have a calm mind, if you can journey with people to actually have inner peace, then some people will be able to serve me properly and they'll be able to live life with a lot of joy and happiness. So one of the things that I also talk about that I really picked up in CBT that I love and I talk to a lot of my clients about is the fact that whatever it is that you're grappling with, hold that thing until you come to a place of peace. So let me give you an example. So my daughter goes out, I remember when she went out with her friends when the lockdown was lifted, and it was 11 p.m., then 11:30, and it was 12. And I woke up and I was like, where is she? And every thought began to flood through my mind. I'm talking about how to come to a place of peace now with thoughts. And I sat and I thought, okay, calm down. Where is she now? She's gone out. Does she have angelic assistance? Yes. Can you go where she is? No. Can your prayers go? Yes. So why don't you pray? Commit her into God's hands because he gives his angels charge over her and he will keep her. And guess what? I did that and I just went back to sleep. I wouldn't have done that before. So that means, and that's one of the ways by which you know that you have released the matter to the Lord. You don't deny its existence. You don't pretend it's not there. Face it head on. Do some talk therapy. David said, why are you downcast, oh my soul? Put your trust in God. So David was able to speak to his soul. And that's where talk therapy comes from. Speak to your mind. Be still, be quiet, and it will definitely listen to you.
Yeah.
Well, Abbiih, so much of what you said, it gives us so much to think about. I'm connecting this with my journey through lockdown that I can see so many
similarities.
Yeah, similarities. When it happened, it was like, okay, it's happening. And then I started watching the news a lot and in the end, I had to remember that it's my responsibility to protect my mind. We eat the right food, we do the right exercise, and then we go and wreck our brains by feeding it with everything that isn't good. So I had to come to the discipline of I would listen to the news at midday, middle of the day. Once I would look at what was happening and move on. I wanted to know what was going on. I think it's important to know what's going on, but I wasn't going to do it first thing and I wasn't going to do it last thing. And that made such a difference to me. Also, I've had to say to people very proactively, can you stop talking to me about that? I've heard what you said, because in a way, you don't give God any space in your brain, do you? I mean, I couldn't even hear God about. Well, I will say what it was. It was about the vaccine thing, and I was just bombarded with people telling me things, and I will share this online because
and people bombard you with information that actually at that point isn't even relevant. There's these vaccines being developed, but no one knows what vaccine we're talking about. There's no official vaccine that you can even really hang a hat on and talk about that specific one. And so you're just getting bombarded with information for no real reason at that point in time.
But then it came nearer that it was coming out, and I could not even think clearly, because the vaccine is really important to us. I mean, we're a travelling ministry. We travel all over the world, and God has given us a mandate to sound the alarm. Well, so this vaccine is really important. So I said to some people who continue, please, I don't want to hear any more about it. And I had to have space for God and I to have a conversation. So I prayed, and I said, Jesus, I need you to send people that we know and trust, and somebody with expertise. And I think that was on the Wednesday. On the Saturday evening, I get this message from Andrew. I've had a message from Jonathan. They said they're doing something on the vaccine on Sunday morning. Now, I mean, this was 2 or 3 days later. Do I know and trust you? Yes. Did you have somebody who had
some expertise?
Yes. Experience and qualifications? Yes. And so within that short space of time, God miraculously, I think, answered my prayer, but I had to shut out all the bombardment of what was coming and give him space. So I've been on a learning curve in this, and it's really helpful to hear you, because I think many people listening will be on the same curve.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, actually, because I feel that there was a lot, and still is a lot, of anxiety. And the beauty of anxiety, to be honest with you, is whether if it's positive when we receive gifts, when you're going to prepare a sermon, or when you're going somewhere and you're like, oh my God, you're a bit anxious, that's good. But anxiety can be negative when you're uncertain, when it's almost like, what's going on, And I don't think social media has helped, because everybody's perspective is being aired. And so the good, the bad, and the ugly, people are coming from all sorts of angles. So I feel that part of the reason why you felt that way, because when I was speaking to some of the ladies in my church about my experience, they were like, I went through the same thing too. I went through the same thing too. And I liked what you said about being bombarded, because one of the things, and first thing and last thing at night, one of the things I do now regularly is I watch what I do at night before going to bed. In fact, during that period, I will put my earphones on, YouTube, and be listening to the Bible on tape and fall asleep listening to the word, And so I like what you're saying. And that's one of the ways by which we have to take care of our minds. In fact, I was talking about it recently, and even I was so excited the way I was describing it. We have to, just like you said, Daphne, what we eat, what we drink, the same way, take care of your mind. It's so precious. It's like your diamond, it's like gold. You don't just find gold everywhere. Gold is so expensive. That's how expensive your mind is. You have to nurture it. You have to feed it. You have to take care. You have to check what's going in and what's going out. If I could talk about different aspects of the mind, from nostalgia to perspective to attitude, to different cognitive distortions that we may experience, that which I feel has to do with man's falling nature. But as we become conscious of what is going through our minds and the different distortions, we're able to bring it to the subjection of Christ, because the Bible says God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound, calm mind.
Yeah. You mentioned you've mentioned a lot of things which, like you said, you could pick up on. No, it's good. We want it.
It's really good.
One of the things you talk about is when there's that thing that you fear, that you need to face that. And our instinct is to go, I've got this thought and it's scaring me. I don't want to think about it. So I'm going to throw it. I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to try not to think about it. But how often does that work? Like, that fear is always there, even if you're trying not to think about it. And I went through a season where I was very anxious about some things. And so I was talking to someone, and the way he described it, he said it's like tug of war. And he said, if fear, you're playing tug of war with fear. And for as long as you don't, for as long as you try not to think about it, for as long as you dwell on it, you are playing tug of war. Fear will remain as long as you are tied to that rope. And he said, you need to face the fear. You need to face that situation which you're scared of or you're anxious about, and think about what's the worst case scenario of that situation. Because often we take molehills and we turn them into mountains.
Yep.
And so he said, face it. Find what is the worst case scenario in that situation, and then say, that's the worst you can do to me. Like, I'm not scared of that. And suddenly you drop the rope, and now you're not playing tug of war with fear, and fear has nothing to attach itself to you with. And so that's a lot of what you were talking about. And people today are bombarded, like we've talked about, with negativity. It's all very overwhelming. And sort of the overarching theme that we've talked about up to this point is finding that peace in the storm. And so what are a few things that you found help you to do that, or maybe some principles that you've come up with that you taught people through? How can people who are feeling so overwhelmed by the world right now find that calm in the storm?
I think, Andrew, thanks for that. One of the things about life is that stress comes to all of us. No matter how careful you are, no matter how, I was in an investment class the other day, and the trainer said, low risk, high risk, medium risk. And most of the people were like medium. So whether you're low risk, medium risk, or high risk, fear comes to all of us. At one point in time or the other, we will be stressed. So I think that's one of the first things, that it's not peculiar to you. And you're not abnormal when you're afraid. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because when you don't have information, when something happens, you think, oh my gosh, it's me. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you do not stop, if you do not take stock, if you do not, if you want to go into denial mode, then you're making things worse for yourself. So the first thing is, fear. We all get afraid at different times. We're anxious or we're stressed. Our response is the most important. How should you and I respond to stress? Don't let me start numbering. One of the things we need to do is to acknowledge that I am stressed. You have to acknowledge it. Don't pray it away at that point in time. Acknowledge it. Once it's been acknowledged, then you begin to think to yourself, which is very similar to what you're saying. Okay, so why am I being stressed right now? Nobody knows. So right now, let's deal with something that's, like Daphne mentioned. So the vaccine. So there's been this whole hoo-ha about it. I was in a meeting with some of my colleagues, and one of them said, I've thought about the vaccine and I'm going for it because I travel a lot, and, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah, I get it. And, and I thought that's good. So he's been able to, he's processed it and he's accepted it. I was reading the news I was listening to the news this morning about it. And, when the newscaster finished, the person ended up with this question. So how do we know that the vaccine is going to work? I thought, you shouldn't end the news like that, because already you are telling people, we don't know if it's going to work. We don't know what the side effects are going to be. So some people are going to begin to panic. Yeah. And so what do? I would look for information. So there's the mRNA, which is synthetic, and there's the other ones which are not. So I choose the ones that are synthetic because, like you and I heard from the virologist and the biochemist, that one, it would wear itself out anyway. But that is me. So in my own, if I have to, then I will. But if I don't have to, I'm not going. If I'm not going to have to travel, if it's not mandatory, then I'm not going to want to take even the flu jab. I won't take anyway. But that's my own personal choice. So you find out that with these things, you have to face them head on, and then you have to do a lot of self-talk. And nobody can do the self-talk for you. You have to come to that place. But if people are struggling, which is why they will come to somebody like me, then I talk them through. What are your fears? Why are you afraid? What is it about the vaccine that is creating palpitations for you? And just try, because sometimes we just need that. These thoughts that are in your head that are telling you that you're about to drown, you need somebody else to confirm that you're drowning or that you're just imagining things. And our brains play a lot of tricks on us. Oh my goodness. Daphne doesn't say hello to me. Your brain says she doesn't like you. Yeah. Andrew is not smiling at my jokes. Oh gosh, I'm boring. So the brain is constantly playing games on us. And depending on where you grow, on your upbringing, if you're raised by a loving family who believed in you, then hey, your battle with the mind may be 10%. But in a case where you're in a home where nobody likes you, your parents have told you point blank, you don't get on with anyone, nobody seems to understand you, then you find out that your battle with the mind is likely to be much more severe. So call it what it is. But no matter how far gone one is emotionally, no matter how weak our emotional muscles are, if we take baby steps towards positivity, and that's it, Andrew, honestly, you have to take baby steps. And that's where hope comes in. That, okay, like a mustard seed, I know that I am beautiful. Andrew may not laugh at my joke. I know that I'm funny. Daphne may frown, but I know that it doesn't matter whether she frowns or not. I love me. I've looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm confident in my personality. I know I'm self-aware. I'm conscious of my strengths, my weaknesses, my thoughts, my belief. So I don't need any validation from anyone. So those are conversations we must continue to have with our minds so that we are able to handle the stress of life. So if you're at a workplace and you're thinking, oh, my boss doesn't like me, oh, this, that, and then ask yourself, why am I thinking that way? Why am I thinking that way? If you have the opportunity, you can ask your boss, but not from a, you don't do this and that. No, not with an attitude, but, more from a constructive angle that, oh, this is what I noticed. I just want to be sure that I'm not imagining things, and let the person say, oh, you are imagining things, or you're not imagining things. And if you're not, then you can work on yourself. So I hope that's helped. So you can't afford to be in denial. There's going to have to be a lot of self-talk. If you can't, when you're doing the self-talk, still deal with the bombardment, then you get help. You speak to someone. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that about if Daphne frowns, because when I concentrate, I do look like I'm frowning. I mean, I do. I've had to kind of retrain myself not to. And the number of people have thought that I am angry or...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That must be my prophetic edge. Because
yes, that was your prophetic edge. And so they'll go to Andrew or Daniela and say, oh, I think your mum's angry with me. And they're like, no, she isn't.
I always say, yes, you are.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
But even like when Andrew and Daniela, especially when they were younger, they were speaking on the platform, and it's my concentrating voice. So I'm listening like this, and they would come off.
Your concentrating face.
Yeah, my concentrating face. So they would come off and say, what did I say wrong? And I said, nothing, it was brilliant. So I've had to retrain my face so I don't give people the wrong expression. But like you were saying, what people picked up was exactly the opposite.
Yeah,
to what I was giving. So both of us have got to work on it. But going back to what we think about, these are my thoughts as you were speaking. I think in counselling terms, and we go over and over and over it, it's called ruminating. Mm-hmm. So you're going over and over and you're digging yourself a pit. Well, now, you correct me if I'm wrong here. The subconscious mind doesn't have any sense of conscience. It doesn't have any sense of time. It doesn't have, the subconscious mind just retains things and says they are.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as I understand, the subconscious mind can only be retrained by what it hears.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just think your mind into that place. And the Bible talks about speaking the word, not thinking the word, speaking the word, and what we say, retraining our mind as well as what we think. So, when I began to think about this, it became a matter of not only protecting my mind from what other people say and do, but from what I say and do. Because sometimes we're our own worst enemies. I mean, if you said something to me like, Daphne, you were really awful on the podcast.
You have a horrible face.
I would be decimated. But I say that to myself. I can say that to myself many times a day.
And it's somehow seen as acceptable to speak badly of yourself.
Yeah. So we have some responsibility, do we not, in the way that we speak about, look at, and talk about ourselves, and in the reprogramming of our subconscious mind, particularly by what we say. Have I got that right?
Yes, yes, it's both and. What you think about and what you say to yourself.
Yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is the subconscious, our minds are like wet cement, and it latches onto things and it just stays with it. And so you may just be doing something completely different, and your mind just comes out with this thought. And you're like, where did that come from? But I would say the minute that thing comes through, the minute the thought comes through and it's a negative one, you need to make sure you hijack it. I have to use that strong word. You need to hijack it, otherwise it will hijack you. And so it's a combination of what is coming out, and what is going in. I know the Bible says that it is not what goes out that defiles us. Sorry, it is not what goes in that defiles us, is what goes out. So what the thoughts that's coming through your mind, you need to be conscious of it. You need to be aware, okay, why am I thinking this way? What is the trigger? And sometimes it may be you self-sabotaging yourself, or it may be something that's happened. And the more I delve into the mind, the more I meditate, the more I read stuff, the more I realize that no matter how careful we are, somebody will give you an unsolicited advice or compliment, negative or positive. Somebody will send you a text that they're not supposed to send you. Somebody will send you an email, So there's some things that we have absolutely no control over. We don't have control over what people say to us. And sometimes we don't even have control over some of the thoughts that actually flies through our minds. But if you are conscious of the fact that you have responsibility for your mind, I am telling you, you will look at your thoughts differently. You will think about what's going through your mind differently. Well, let me tell you how this started for me. I just realized that I was so scared of the knife. I've never had an incident with one before. I've never been threatened before. Where that came from, I couldn't tell you. This was in my late teens. That was the beginning of my journey into things to do with the mind. And my goodness, I was so scared that a knife that is sitting on my kitchen table is just going to latch itself to my hand. Can you imagine that? But what happened was I allowed the thoughts. And so it became, I think Andrew mentioned it earlier on, it became so magnified that I became so terrified. There was a lady that I went to see a therapist because she was afraid of radiators. Can you imagine that? She was so scared of the radiators that she was salivating, she was palpitating, and things like that. So how do you rewire that? So what do you do? The first thing is to realize that, okay, the radiator is not going to harm me. So I'm the one here that has painted this whole picture, and I need to unpaint that picture. So you could do the unpainting by watching on these days. You can watch on YouTube the effects of a radiator. You can read up on it. You can speak to an expert on it. As you're doing that, your brain is being rewired. The more you do that, the more rewiring, and then gradually you begin to come into where the radiator is. You feel it. If you're still scared, you go back and you come back. And if you keep doing it and you keep saying to yourself, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. Gradually, and then when you're not with the radiator, you think about it on your own. There's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be afraid of. And before you know it, the whole emotions fizzles out and things like that. And you're able to not be afraid of whatever it is. So the subconscious mind tricks us a lot of the times. Our conscious mind also tricks us with thoughts that just begins to seep out. But whichever way, whether from out externally or internally, we have the responsibility to guard our hearts, because out of it are the issues of life.
So can I twist this a little bit?
Yeah.
Right. So I know that your mind is precious, that your mind needs protecting, that you are working hard on your mind, etc. I have the ability to throw a stone into that by the way I talk to you, by the way I respond to you, by what I do. I have a responsibility for other people's minds as well as my own, to a limited degree. And I think so often we don't think before we speak to people. We don't think of the impact of our words or actions. And now there's a few principles, and I haven't got it right by a long way, but there's a few principles that I hold dear. First of all, there's this thing called attachment bonding, which is the more you're bonded to somebody, the greater the power of their words and the more they can hurt you. So if somebody said something to me in the street, I'd probably come in and laugh and say, aren't they stupid?
This person doesn't have a clue who I am.
Yeah, but if Andrew says it to me, it's going to cause. So one of my principles is, if somebody gives me their heart, if somebody's there, I have a responsibility now to protect them with truth. I'm not talking about the same, but my words are going to be very powerful in their lives. So I really try and honour that with the way that I treat them. The other thing is social media and emails and things like that. The number of times I pull people back from dealing with confrontation via social media. Never do it. It's always face to face, always do that, because whatever we read can be interpreted in 1,000 different ways. You haven't got the facial expression, you haven't got the body language, you haven't got the tone of voice, you have words that can be interpreted any way the person receives them in that moment.
When people post things on social media, because it's very impersonal, they would write things or say things on social media in such a way that they would never say it to someone's face.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just using those two examples of a way that we have some responsibility for other people in the way that we respond, and we need to be careful of other people's minds, etc. Am I right?
Yeah, you're so right, actually, because the thing about social media is, I think before you get on it, you need to decide, why am I going on social media? And, where in the early days when, we started getting into social media, I remember one of my friends saying to me that, that there's an increase of people who are going into therapy for social media. And I'm like, really? But with time, actually, I started seeing things like, people don't like my posts, people don't comment on it. I'm like, so what? It doesn't really matter, and like you said, some people actually the dirty leanings out there. Some people, call out their friends because they've done stuff to them. And I think it was yourself or Andrew who said that the way people come across on social media can be very impersonal. Meanwhile, when they see you in person, they won't do that. And there is a lot of that. But the thing about social media is because it is so picturistic, it's full of images. You find that a lot of people get swayed by that, because for instance, we eat with our eyes, so it's the same way, with social media. So when you see things, especially for the young, girls and even guys, feeling under pressure, they want to be the best, they want to look this way. I was listening to someone who said, look, don't even worry about your hair being in a particular place, because a lot of the celebrities have stylists, they have photographers, they have people who take their pictures, they follow them around. Do you have that? No. So yours is definitely not going to be on the same level as theirs. So there's this fakeness, there's this lies that if we're not careful, we would actually binge on. And honestly speaking, a lot of people, even you'll be surprised that a lot of influencers are in therapy. I was reading the article of a top psychologist in central London who is seeing a lot of influencers, and because of they're one thing on social media, but behind the scenes there's something else. So there is that, and that's one of the things we're going to be contending with in this generation, because social media has both positives and negatives, and we really want to use it positively, and we have to exercise self-control in making sure we don't mess up ourselves and the lives of others, because of our leaning for social media. We really have to make sure we don't do that. So yeah, I agree with you. That definitely does happen.
Yeah, I think there's sort of a thread that's running through this, and I think a lot of it comes back to identity. And so when you're talking about self-confidence, or not being swayed by what other people say or do, or the likes that you get, or trying to almost compare yourself or be like other social media influencers, or whatever category or area of life, a lot of it comes back to being confident in yourself and who you are, and building your identity and protecting your identity. And so what would you say about that, about how can people sort of almost discover who they are as an individual and protect that, and not be so swayed into thinking that they suddenly have to be like someone else or be comparing themselves to other people?
Okay. When it comes to identity, my goodness, that is so, I'm so you are really pressing all my buttons.
That's good.
I live to press buttons.
My identity buttons and my thinking buttons. I love identity. Well, I think the thing about identity is it's a journey, it's a personal journey, because I went on mine. It was one of the first questions I asked myself: who am I? And it took me a while, but I finally got there, that I'm first a child of God. I'm everything that's happened to me. My dad died he died at the age of 50. I was 18. Of course, the whole trauma of losing him and having to come to terms. It took me almost 6 years to grieve him, and just things like that. And so you are a combination of everything that's happened to you. And it's almost like paper. When I teach on identity, I say it's like taking this paper, and then finally you begin to unravel it, and then you're expecting that there be no creases on it. It's not possible. So once you know that you're everything that's happened to you, part of your identity is to also be self-aware. So what I do in my mentoring sessions, or when people approach me about identity and mind and purpose, one of the first things I do is take them through what I call a temperament test. Because part of your identity is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And so we go through that. And then the next thing is self-awareness. Oh my gosh, I'm so hot on that, because your self-awareness has to do your strengths, your weaknesses, your beliefs, your thoughts, the way you approach things, the way you look at things, And so when you know that, and for me, I wanted to be like my pastor's wife. I wanted to be like her, because she's very quiet. When she enters the room, nobody knows she's she's there. She wears her shirts and trousers. And I actually invested in a lot of shirts and trousers myself, but I was very uncomfortable. So I came across the temperament test. I did that. I realized that I'm sanguine. I love color. Do you know, in real life, I actually love butterflies. I love, my goodness, the colors of butterfly. I love colors. When I go to the store, I'm always attracted to the rainbows, the colors of the rainbows and things like that. So I realized that actually I'm an extrovert. I'm very sociable. I love to smile. I love going out by myself or with myself. And so I've had to embrace that. And the not so good bit about I'm sanguine melancholic. Sanguines can be disorganized. I'm melancholic. I'm a perfectionist. And because I'm a perfectionist, one is prone to depression. And so those things helps me to know that this is me and I love me. Do you know, I actually look in the mirror. I know with the bits I don't like about my body, but I have embraced me. And we need to do that. Everybody at some point in the other needs to look at themselves in the mirror and say, this is me. This is my temperament. I love me. And when I was younger, I was sanguine melancholic, but as I've gotten older, I'm melancholic sanguine. So I'm more reflective. You find me really quiet. I'm very, very reflective. I didn't used to be like that before, and so that's me. So that made me very confident, extremely. So I would sit with you and I would talk. And I always say to people, I own my voice. I own my space. No matter where I'm called upon, I will speak and I will tell you my story. I'll tell you my journey. You tell me yours. And the more I look at humans, the more I know that everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Every single human being on the earth. So that means we're equals. It means, you may be in charge, but it doesn't make you less better than me. And I love the gospel of the kingdom, because the gospel of the kingdom says the accountant and the pastor are equals. The difference is that the pastor is focusing on spiritual things, while the accountant is focusing on figures. But when we come together, I need what the accountant has, and the accountant needs my prayers so that things can be, so it's that gospel of the kingdom as well that's helped me to be very, very secure and confident in myself, that I'm first a child of God, and then every other thing that's happened to me in life, I embrace as well. Yes.
So
yeah.
Abbiih, this identity, I just want. We're getting towards the end, but
yeah, we are getting towards the end.
You are a pastor, and I want to focus on pastors just for a moment, right?
Okay.
So when lockdown happened, when churches were closed, and like for me, my own personal journey, so we're traveling, we're doing conferences, we're speaking to pastors and leaders, we're doing all this, and suddenly it stopped. And it stopped for an indefinite length of time. And I had a personal crisis probably for about 20 minutes. But, it was a good crisis to have because it helped me to empathize with other people. Who am I now? Who am I? I mean, I don't know when I'm going to stand on a platform again. And I enjoy what I do. I'm passionate about it. I love it. And I mean, what I've believed my whole life, and that didn't change. But for the last 28, goodness knows how many years, this is what's made my heart sing. This is what I've loved. And suddenly it stopped, not by my control. Now, like I say, mine lasted about 20 minutes and, all of a sudden I go, hey, come on, Daphne, you've still got your passion. You're still who you are. Nothing has changed about you. It might have changed about what you do. But I can imagine that many, many pastors are struggling right now because they have had removed, many of them for almost a lifetime, of everything that they have done, that they have built, and some of them may see it tumbling around them. They are not relating with people in the same way. I can imagine many are struggling with, who am I?
Yeah.
Can you, as a pastor, speak to pastors and leaders, or maybe people even in professions have got a similar experience, who in this moment are struggling with everything being removed and saying, who am I?
That's a very, very interesting perspective, because I work as a consultant for one of the Christian charities, and part of what I do is linking up with pastors, and we found that there's so much that's been happening. And even as a pastor myself, I think the reason what I've missed is the gathering together of the saints, going to church and things like that. But because I've always had my hands in different other things, with the lockdown, for me, it was almost like a reset button was pressed for me to reflect on what I do and how I do what I do. And like I said, within this period, I've done my certifications and things like that. So, but one of the things I will say is that, first and foremost, nobody anticipated the lockdown. The next 2 years is going to be very interesting as we reset. I belong to a group of pastors, and we meet online ever so often. And so one of the common things we all know is that some of our church members have been reset as well. Some are not coming back. Some are joining. It's almost like we're literally going to start church all over again. And every single one of us as leaders must bear that in mind. And the thing is, whether we like it or not, it's almost like the online has been forced. Digitalization has been forced upon us. Where we've done it once, now we have to do it 20 times. And so we're finding that as churches, we need to be able to flow with that as well and use it positively. One of the organizations I consult for actually said that during this period, they have had more successes online than even any one of their festivals that they've ever had. So there is positivity, but it's going to take time to be able to do that. And then also with our identity being linked up with our work as pastors is more to do with our profession than who we are as a person. And so I'm sure a lot of people are going to have to break both of them, separate both of them. That, okay, I'm first a Christian and then I'm a pastor. So I'm first a child of God. I'm first loved by God. I'm first a man before I'm a husband. That's a different office. I'm a leader. I've been called into the pastoral work. That's my job, and so the job is dynamic. It's changing, and I'm going to have to do the same with it. It's one of the things I would say. So to all pastors out there, you're not alone. We're in this together. We just really need to make sure that we update our skills. It's going to be tough, but we can, and that's where CBT comes in, right? So I'm going to say it's going to be tough, but you can do it. Seek for help. Get the younger generation, especially if you're if you're older. Link up with the younger generation. Get on courses, Zooms. Get on, and we have to make sure we update ourselves. But one thing I would like to say is my profession as a pastor does not define me. I define my profession based on who I am.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, you just pressed our button when you talked about linking the generations, but we won't even go there because we're trying to...
for another time.
You saved that till the end, right? But that is, another key that you have just said is we're not alone. When people feel that they're alone, that's when a lot of trouble comes in, and we're not alone. And we are so grateful for your wisdom, Abbiih.
Oh,
so grateful. And it comes across with passion, with conviction. And
thank you. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly.
I think we'll have to have you back because my brain is going, we need to hear more about this, that and the other.
Yeah, thank you, Abbiih. Right. We really appreciate you and Jonathan. Please pass the love on to him, and hopefully we can have you back again and carry on a conversation.
Thank you. And my warm regards to Danielle as well. Please let me say hello to her as well. Thank you.
We will do that. We will do that.
Thank you, Abbiih.
Thank you.
All right then. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If it inspired you, please rate us and subscribe on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or another podcast platform.